and moderator. The show is being broadcast right here on 770 CHQR in Calgary and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. Now, we're doing this every 2 weeks during the summer because it is summer. So Saturday mornings, every 2 weeks at this time, I will be speaking with Premier Jason Kenney about some of the issues of the day. But again, it's really your opportunity to ask questions of the Premier, to voice your concerns or raise issues that you feel need to be addressed. Whatever's on your mind, you can speak with the Premier one-on-one. Just remember to keep it short and keep it respectful and be patient, of course. We get a lot of calls and we get a lot of texts, and please keep those text messages short as well. There are a lot of them. I don't have time to read a novel, so keep them short. Premier Kenney wants to hear from you. You can call or text. In Calgary, the number is 403-974-8255. In Edmonton, 780-496-0063. And across the province, 1-800-563-7770. Premier Kenney, welcome to the show.
Great to be back, Wayne. Thank you.
It's nice to have you back in studio. And boy, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I mean, we had Canada Day yesterday. We got the Calgary Stampede coming up. Last time we chatted, you were on to Leduc to celebrate the anniversary of Leduc #1, which really set the province on its energy course. And on that note, all right, I want to start off the show with my own question. Now, I caught a recent interview on Shay Ganam's show about why Alberta should at least have a conversation about implementing a provincial sales tax, or as Shay so rightly called it, a provincial suicide tax.
Political suicide tax.
Political suicide tax, right. Now, it focused on a new book that's out. It's a collection of reports, really, from a number of different economists, former politicians, senior public servants, and a political columnist. Now, I'm probably like most Albertans in that whenever I hear talk of a sales tax, my response is, we already pay enough tax, right? But the editor of the book, Robert Aska, who is a former director of the Institute for Public Economics at the University of Alberta, said a few things that make me want to get a copy of this book and at least look at the arguments and read them. So here's some of the key points that I took away from Shay's conversation with Robert Aska. Since 1965, there has been no government surplus in Alberta unless it has come as a result of resource revenue. Albertans pay, through taxation, only 70 to 90% of the cost of public services. Even with a 3% sales tax, Alberta would still have the lowest tax in the country, so the Alberta advantage would remain. And the editor recommends the next provincial government put together a fiscal review commission to look at overall policy so that we have a more stable source of revenue as opposed to the boom and bust budgeting that we're so used to. And certainly with your government, we have seen this huge increase in revenue as a result of oil royalties. And as a politician, an outgoing premier of Alberta, Premier Kenney, you might be a little safer in commenting on a provincial sales tax. So what is your response to all of this?
All really interesting points. And I agree, it's always worth a debate.
Yeah.
We should never take anything off the table in terms of debate. You get better policy if you have an open discussion about issues. First things first here. I just want to point out that the surplus we just reported for last year, which would be our first Alberta balanced budget in 7 years, would not have happened if we had not exercised spending restraints. So obviously, the rebound in oil and gas prices was a huge part of it, but not the only part. I want to be clear. Right. This year's budget, we have balanced it based on $70 WTI this year. We're so far averaging over $100 a barrel. But again, that balance would not have happened if we continued on the previous government spending track. So you need fiscal responsibility, because one of the problems in their modern Alberta is when we get an oil boom, we track our spending up and we spend what comes in, and then when the revenues come down, the taxpayers are left holding the bag with debt. Second point. There's a lot of sound economic arguments to be made not for adding a sales tax, but shifting tax weight perhaps from income to consumption. The economists will pretty much all tell you that's a less damaging form of revenue collection. It's less likely to disincentivize work, saving, and investment, the kind of activity that creates wealth, which is why, way back in the midst of time, in 1994, I think, or 5, when I was head of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, I gave a speech in Edmonton making this argument. And I said we could eliminate the provincial sales income tax, which would be pretty cool, but replace it with about a 7% harmonized GST. The economy would probably be stronger. We'd have a more stable revenue source. And holy smokes, did I get whacked by Albertans who were furious. Yeah. Members of my organization demanding their... I wasn't saying we should do this. I just saying it was an idea.
Yeah, to talk about
And that's where I learned that PST in Alberta is political suicide tax. Yeah. So here's the third and final point. As coming out of that experience, I worked with the Klein government and persuaded them to pass something called the Taxpayer Protection Act, which has been law now since 95. And it says you cannot introduce a sales tax in Alberta without a referendum and Albertans having their consent. So that's the bottom line. If there are people who think it's a good idea, it's their responsibility to persuade Albertans, because I don't think you can go and force, or you should not force the public to pay a tax that they absolutely hotly oppose. And finally, we did include in our platform a commitment to a revenue commission to look at the revenue picture of the province. And I don't know what the next premier will do, but that's on the books.
All right. We do have to have at least that conversation on moving forward in the next 5, 10, 15 years, a review of fiscal policy to make it more efficient.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Let's get right to the phones. Ron's been hanging on since before you were here. Ron, calling from Bowness. Go ahead, Ron.
Buenos dias, Premier Kenny.
Buenos dias.
With the war in Ukraine entering its 6th month, to what extent has the need for energy security been prioritized in the free world? And has there been any progress in the probability that new pipelines in Canada will be approved and constructed in the near future?
Great questions, Ron. On energy security, yes. The world, especially the naive green left types in governments, have been mugged by reality with the invasion of Ukraine. You know, you've heard me say, if you been listening for years, that we need to expand Alberta oil production and exports so that we can compete with and ultimately displace dictator oil that fuels conflict. And now Putin's invasion of Ukraine is almost a perfect object lesson of that point. It's a billboard that of the top 10 oil producers in the world, only 2 are rights-respecting democracies, Canada and the United States. Only 2 produce their energy through publicly traded and accountable companies, Canada and the United States. The other 8 of the top 10 are bad actors, world's worst regimes, dictators, autocracies whose oil is produced by state-owned enterprises or state-directed companies. And that's why I've been in Washington 3 times in the last 6 months, because we are getting a very, very open hearing about this. And I'm going to be taking this message likely on investment promotion trips to other parts of the world over the summer and fall. So they're listening, but part of the problem here, Ron, is that governments in North America, and the Trudeau and Biden governments in particular, have created so much policy uncertainty over the future of the oil and gas sectors that these companies are not willing to invest in significant increases in upstream exploration and production. So once we fully rebound from COVID and this potential stagflationary recession, you're going to see a very serious and durable shortage of global supply. So that's why we need policy certainty so that we can get these companies to risk shareholders' money in democracies on new production and on pipelines. Well, look, we've got there's several projects that are moving forward to optimize pipeline shipments within North America, line reversals, introduction of drag reduction agents, all of which together could increase by about 400,000 barrels a day the amount of oil that we ship out of Alberta. And TMX is still, Trans Mountain expansion, on schedule for completion by the first quarter of 2024.
All right. We're going to take a break, but when we return, we're going to be chatting with Steve from Edmonton. So, Steve, hang on. You are listening to Your Province, Your Premier. I'll be back when we return.
What to wear, what to wear. Well, hello, linen dress. Haven't worn you in a while. Let's see if we still got it. Oh, yeah, we've got this one in the bag. Speaking of bags, this outfit could use a new designer purse and a pair of sandals from Winners. With their amazing deals, we can make this look feel fresh again. Now, strike a pose. No, not that one.
Level up your style. Head back to Winners for amazing deals on your favorite brand name fashion, footwear, accessories, and home decor. Winners. Find fabulous for less.
When you work for the Salvation Army Center of Hope, you're making a difference in the lives of many Edmontonians. You give them something to believe in. Join the Salvation Army and find a position right for you at salvationarmy.ca/careers.
How do you say hello to your customers when they're everywhere? Think Coors Creative Services. We can help reach your entire audience, internal and external, like no one else, no matter where they are. Find out how. CoorsCreative.ca.
Pucker up for the best part of summer. A&W's new frozen lemonades, a refreshing twist on a summer favorite. Transport your taste buds to frozen lemon heaven by trying one of 3 flavors: classic, sweet cream, or strawberry. All made with real fruit and natural cane sugar for some pure summer vibes. Get your lips on one of A&W's new frozen lemonades at an A&W Brew Bar location today. Available for a limited time.
Summer movie season is back at Landmark Cinemas with more action, laughs, dinosaurs, and more Extras Rewards points. From May 13th to August 4th, get 3 times the points when you spend $150. Get 4 times the points on $200. Get 5 times the points on $250. So spend $200, get 4,000 points.
That's like 4 movie tickets or 8 hot dogs or 140 Twizzlers or 4,000 pops of popcorn.
Bottom line, movie more, get more Extras points. Not a member? Sign up at landmarkextras.com. Landmark Cinemas, for movie lovers.
Breathe in the fresh air with Parks and Pathways steps from your front door at West Winds in Morinville. Ideally situated in the vibrant town of Morinville, West Winds townhomes feature everything you need, including easy highway access, a brand new school, walking paths and pond, green spaces, playgrounds, and so much more. Choose from a variety of 2- and 3-bedroom floor plans, highlighted by modern open concept designs and quality finishes. Experience a small town feel with big town features today by visiting westwindsliving.ca. A Landrix development.
Hi, Mike here from Northgate Chevrolet Buick GMC. The sounds of summer are here. Ooh, that last one. That's not good. Definitely not the way you want to kick off summer. The good news is, at Northgate Chevrolet Buick GMC, we're having a road trip and service event. Bring your vehicle by today for a multi-point vehicle inspection and a tire rotation, and we'll ensure you're road trip and ready. Visit us online at northgategm.com.
Wondering what the Premier is thinking? Want to ask him a question or two? Now's your chance.
You're listening to Your Province, Your Premier on 630 CHAD, Edmonton's News. Today's Talk.
Welcome back. Your Province, Your Premier airs every other Saturday morning during the summer at this same time from 10 until 11 throughout Alberta. In Calgary on 770 CHQR and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. I'm Wayne Nelson, and this is your opportunity to voice your concerns, address issues you feel are important, to speak with the Premier one-on-one. And to that end, let's get right to it. Steve, you are first up. Steve calling from Edmonton. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hi, good morning. There was an article in the news going back to May 2021, and I haven't seen any updates concerning the fact that Alberta can't ticket travelers refusing to quarantine because it hasn't adopted the federal act, being the Contraventions Act, which gives police additional powers to enforce the Quarantine Act. Stats on reported fines issued for Quarantine Act offenses through June 2022 show that no fines have been issued in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Kudos to Alberta and Saskatchewan for not signing a pact with the devil, but I'm curious to know what is behind Alberta's decision not to adopt the act, and is it still under discussion, or is the matter concluded?
Sorry, Steve. You've done your research there. I don't believe it ever has been under discussion. I mean, I vaguely recall this maybe coming up at some point, kind of mid-pandemic. And we were not, we had not, adopted the necessary legal measures to comply with the federal law, and we decided we weren't going to. And so it's over, done and dusted. I think that's completely behind us. And as far as I know, the feds have now effectively lifted their quarantine requirements for people coming in, but they do have I think a requirement that you self-isolate if you have an active infection. But we've never been responsible for enforcing that, and we're not going to become responsible.
All right, let's go to the texts. This one coming in from Edmonton. How is the average family in Alberta supposed to survive and be able to buy food, pay bills, and gas without going poor and hungry? When will inflation stop? This is a real hot topic right across the country.
Yeah, it's the number one issue, not just here, but pretty much around the world. And I don't know when inflation will stop. We thank God, much of our generation has lived through a period of pretty low inflation. Since roughly the early mid-90s, we've been averaging about 2% inflation. If you think back to the 70s, it was the last time we saw this kind of inflation. It sometimes creeped up into double digits. And that just wallops people. It's a tax on their savings. And it is the result of a number of things. Anybody who says there's just one simple explanation is fibbing. The truth is that federal monetary policy, and I believe Pierre Poilievre is right about this, has, by just printing tens and tens of billions of dollars of new fiat currency, the Bank of Canada has accelerated inflation when their job is to control it. Federal fiscal policy, running the largest deficits by orders of magnitude ever, again, has helped to accelerate inflation, and they're not really doing anything to constrain that. But obviously, energy shortages, the invasion of Ukraine have all contributed. So, I think most of the experts hope or project that this will start to come off next year, but we're probably in for a few more months of high inflation. And as you know, Alberta has done more to help consumers with the scrapping the fuel tax, the electricity rebates that are coming on people's bills, natural gas rebates. And we're going to have an announcement, I believe, next week, Wayne, about some additional support.
All right. Now, that is, there's another question on our text line here regarding the fuel rebates. And I just wanted to see if I can find it here. It's taking a little bit long to answer. In the meantime, we're going to go to Daryl, who's calling from Brooks, about propane rebates. Daryl, you're on with Premier Kenney. Go ahead.
Yeah, Premier Kenney, thanks for the job that you did and you continue to do. My question today is about a propane rebate for rural residents in the country that heat their houses with fuel. About a year ago, we used to pay about 32 to 35 cents a liter, then to 86 cents a liter. Now it's touching $1.05, depending where you get it. And I was just wondering if this is going to be part of the rebate program that falls maybe with the natural gas and energy sector. Yeah.
So thanks very much. Good question, Daryl. And I'm going to read a technical response I have to this here, so I get it right. It's that eligible consumers not on the natural gas distribution system or consumers using the annual equivalent of 2,500 GJ or less in other heating fuels like propane, kerosene, and heating oil will also be eligible for the rebate. That's the natural gas rebate, and can apply directly for their rebates through a separate application system. For example, if one of the default regulated rates goes to $7.50 for the month of November, and an annual consumer with a natural gas storage tank on their property purchases the equivalent of 200 GJ, that consumer can apply for a $1 per GJ rebate for the amount of fuel. Specific eligibility limits on each fuel type are listed on alberta.ca. The rebate for these heating fuels will be calculated in the same method using a standardized equation to determine the consumption equivalency for the alternative fuel. Information on how to apply will be released before the October 1st start date. And there's a news release with all the details. If you just maybe go and Google search Alberta fuel rebate, you should be able to get all the details there.
All right, text message, this one coming from Edmonton. My question is around urban versus rural, Edmonton versus the region. For 11 years, this is the texter, I've tried to grow the Alberta International Air Show. Regional politics gives Edmonton excuses not to play. This seems endemic on many issues. How can we get the large cities to play fairly with their regions? And how do you think the UCP could even get seats in the capital?
Well, first of all, kudos to whoever wrote that for trying to get this international air show up with because I think, we've got a really strongly growing aviation sector here. We see it as one of the catalysts for diversification of Alberta's economy. And so that's really commendable. We have had, and this predates our government, we've had these tables of coordination between rural and urban municipalities to try to find synergies and efficiencies and shared services and plan infrastructure together, do all of that kind of stuff. My impression is that Edmonton Global, which is a table that brings together, I think, 16 municipalities, the city of Edmonton and surrounding munis, rural and urban. My impression is they do pretty good work. I generally get high grades from the people I speak to in both the business community and the municipal governments about their collaboration. I think it's much better than it is in the Calgary region, for example. And I think they understand they need to hunt as a pack when it comes to economic development and promoting investment. So I hope this is a bit of an outlier. In terms of winning seats in Edmonton, well, I think in the last election, there was a lot of fears from, Edmonton is more a public sector employment town. And yet most Edmontonians vote federal conservative. But I think provincially, they've been concerned that a government like ours might cut their pay and lay people off, and that would affect their pensions. And people have memories of Ralph Klein's government circa 1993. But in fact, we're very close to finalizing ratified collective bargaining agreements with pretty much all the public sector unions. And we've had very minimal layoffs. We've had some reduction in the public service, about 9,000 positions through attrition. So people can see that it's not been the boogeyman that the NDP depicted before the last election. But what we have brought is a strong economy. And so I hope that you'll see greater comfort with the UCP in Edmonton in the next election.
All right. Tony is texting on the Edmonton line. He says, when are we going back to a flat tax, Mr. Kenny? Nice meeting you in Cold Lake a few years ago.
Well, thanks very much. I loved Alberta's flat tax, or what we called the single rate tax. And that, like I mentioned before, I lobbied the Klein government in the 90s for the Taxpayer Protection Act, the referendum requirement on sales tax. But I also lobbied them on this single rate tax, which ultimately Treasurer Stockwell Day brought in, I think, in the 2000 budget. People from the left caterwauled about that. They said it was regressive. But the truth is, part of the single rate tax is that they brought in a extremely generous basic personal exemption. It's now at $18,400, which is is 40% more generous than the next more generous province. And as a result, 40% of Albertans, Wayne, pay no provincial income tax. I don't think people realize that. And that was introduced to kind of recognize that we were going to,
right.
Higher income people would pay would pay no marginal rate. So low income people would pay nothing. And that was the deal. And it brought a lot of the investment and growth to Alberta that we all benefited from in those years. So that's one of the reasons I committed in the platform to a fiscal revenue review panel to see, can we get back to that? And that's something that the next premier and government will have to determine.
All right. Phones once again. Aaron is calling from Medicine Hat on a disability question. Go ahead, Aaron. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Hi, Premier Kenny. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to ask on behalf of the approximately 10,000 disability sector workers in the province when they may see a raise. It's been a number of years, I guess since 2014, since the disability sector saw a raise, and it's not a unionized employment position, so there's no opportunities for inflationary increases or anything like that. So there's a lot of people who are maxed out and have been for a number of years, and obviously this is not a high-paying type of career either. So just wanted to throw that question out to you, when we could expect to see a disability sector wage increase. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. First of all, thank you to you and others who work with persons with disabilities. It's sometimes difficult, but always incredibly important work, and I know often rewarding to help people who have unique challenges in life. I, as a young guy, did some of that myself. Secondly, I don't really know how to answer the question, because if there's not a collective bargaining unit, then the government of Alberta doesn't deal, I think, directly with that compensation. I think probably I'm guessing here that folks in that sector are working for nonprofits, generally community-based organizations that get funding from the province, and then the nonprofits determine notionally what the compensation is. But so that's an important issue. Thank you for flagging it with me, and I'll raise this with Minister Lewan, our Minister for Community and Social Services.
Okay, Justin calling from Edmonton. Go ahead, Justin. You're on with Premier Kenny. Might help if I push the right button.
Hello, Justin.
Good morning, Premier.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for the work that your administration has done with the work on the committee on the safe supply, and I hope that this work will ensure that the public understands that a safe supply, the government providing hard drugs to drug abusers, is not a suitable solution. And I hope that whoever is next will continue their work in the mental health and addiction field.
Well, thank you, Justin. I certainly hope it will continue as well. And I don't like to focus on, quotes, legacy, because I think you should be in public service for exactly that, not for somebody's legacy or government's legacy. But I'm proud. I'll put it this way. I'm proud of the huge, innovative efforts that we have taken. And Wayne, I really don't believe that most Albertans recognize the degree to which this province is becoming a real example of compassionate reforms in addressing addictions and mental health issues. We recently hosted a conference here in Calgary, attended by 850 delegates, on how to support lifetime recovery from addiction. Now, if you get into the addiction space and issue, there's basically two schools of thought. There's the single-minded focus on so-called harm reduction, and we can see the results of that in the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is basically a charnel house. And then there's a focus on lifetime recovery. Now, the two are not necessarily exclusive, but we are building, we have 5,000 new spaces for treatment and recovery. We are building more detox spaces. We are expanding drug treatment, drug alternative courts for sentencing courts for people who want to go to treatment as opposed to jail. We are providing a safe alternative, for example, to heroin and opioids, and we're doing that telephonically for rural people who can't get in to see a physician. We're working with First Nations. We're building 5 new long-term addictions treatment residential facilities, and much, much more. And Justin, I just hope whoever succeeds me increases the scale of ambition on this, because while deaths from addiction have been coming down, thankfully, this year, they're still far, far too high.
Sure. And we still have a lot of deaths from opioid overdose. Yeah.
And let's not forget, sorry to jump on that, but the opioid addiction crisis in North America started, to be blunt, with a lot of doctors overprescribing opioids, and opioids being seen as a silver bullet to solve for pain management.
Sure, and getting their information from the pharmaceutical companies that we're promoting.
You've probably seen some of the documentaries on that.
Yes.
So now the notion that we can prescribe prescription level heroin and fentanyl, et cetera, to people, so-called safe supply, is, I just think, replaying that movie all over again. It's a deepening addiction rather than offering people a way out of it.
All right. Let's get back to the text messages. This one here from Don in Calgary. What safeguards are in place to ensure the integrity of Alberta's election process?
Well, the Elections Act itself, Elections Alberta, which is an independent commission that oversees the elections. As you know, I don't recall, frankly, ever widespread allegations of improper conduct in Alberta elections. There's sometimes here and there in a particular polling station or riding.
I'm wondering if Don is referring to the leadership election process.
Yeah,
same thing.
Well, with that, again, there's a leadership election committee created by the United Conservative Party. They have a chief returning officer who's impartial. They contract an outside accounting or auditing firm. I don't know who it is at this point. And the ballots are all opened and validated and counted in a secure environment with scrutineers from all of the different campaigns. So, I mean, I think it's as safe as it can be.
All right. Daryl from Bassano, is there a plan to get doctors to the rural communities, as these hospitals and clinics are important to the smaller communities?
100%. And let me say, Wayne, the challenge of rural physician recruitment and retention has been a perennial challenge, and it's probably increasing because what we are finding, honestly, this is anecdotal, but what we're finding is a lot of the younger medical grads in Canada are less inclined to go out to rural communities. They're more focused on quality of life. Because, by the way, we have very strong financial incentives to work in rural. Like this government added, on top of the already generous incentives, we added $80 million for about 800 rural physicians. That's $100K a piece. So
just to get them into the rural communities.
So rural physicians generally can make significantly more money, but a lot of the younger docs are more focused as they weigh things out on, quotes, quality of life and the urban amenities, lifestyle, as opposed to just what's in their bank account. So, sorry to be so blunt about that.
Yeah. I would think that the rural communities would certainly have a good quality of life.
I agree.
As well.
No, I agree. But I'm saying from the perspective of these folks, they want the urban amenities. So here's the point. One of the ways we can get more rural docs is to admit more rural Albertans coming from smaller communities into the med schools and into the residency program because they understand the benefits of rural life, the quality of rural life.
All right. I have a related text, sort of, somewhat. Why is AHS allowed to mandate students and new staff have the COVID vaccination when there are so many adverse effects? My daughter is 18 and just is accepted to school for a healthcare career, and we just found this out, so she can't do her practicum anywhere. I'm reading it verbatim.
Could you repeat that?
Why is AHS allowed to mandate that students and new staff have the COVID vaccination when there are so many adverse effects?
Well, first of all, in terms of adverse effects, I think the questioner may be overstating that. We have administered, well over 7 million doses in Alberta since the program started in the winter of last year. And I think we've reported, stand to be corrected on this, but about 2,500 adverse effects. So the number of serious adverse effects is minuscule compared to the number of doses administered. There's adverse effects for any vaccine, any drug. But if you're going to be working in the medical field, does that mean you're going to not avail yourself of any vaccine or any drug because there might be some adverse effects? That's completely unscientific. Secondly, AHS has always, and its predecessors, the hospital boards way back in the day, they've always required certain vaccines, measles, mumps, rubella, etc. And that's true for hospital systems all around the world. So I don't see it as being unique.
All right. Back to the phones. Don has been holding on for half the show. He's got a great question about roads and road work. Go ahead, Don. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Hi, Mr. Kenny. Thanks. I really appreciate the fact that you're still doing this show. And I would actually like it if you came on more often. Roads in rural Alberta, I know somebody had brought it up earlier, and but some of the main highways, like I was just taking pictures and I was going to go up and measure it, but some of the potholes are like 6 inches deep on the roadways. I don't know. I know the NDP spent a lot of money building $40 million on schools. There was nothing wrong with the old one, but what's happening with the budgeting for the roadways? And I got one other comment. I'll make it quickly. I see that like I was just talking to somebody yesterday in Calgary, and there's a legal challenge still going on, and now they're looking at $5 receipts for this one company that was receiving government funding for taking a train downtown instead of taking the carts, so they could avoid paying parking and other fees. So why are we still? They've spent probably close to $1 million going after this one company on. Anyway, I'm just wondering why we're still wasting money in some areas and we're destroying our cars on the road. Anyway, that's my question. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. I didn't really track the second part of that question about the rail, but we don't direct. I think you're talking about Edmonton roads, and we don't direct municipal infrastructure priorities. We give them a lot of money. Maybe you're referring to the fact that Edmonton and Calgary have decided to spend, in both cases, billions of dollars on expanding their LRT systems as opposed to improving the roads. And those are choices that they've made, and we try to, because those municipal governments, they are elected, and they are elected to represent the priorities of their local taxpayers, and they have put a priority on mass transit. We try to work with them to reflect those priorities, so we put some provincial funding behind it. But I would say this, Don, there is no doubt that a lot of municipal politicians in this country have an ideological zeal to get cars off the road. And, bike lanes in downtown Calgary, Edmonton, all of that. For cities that have winter, like 6 months of the year, give or take. Yeah. And for me, this is not a lot of common sense. And, I'm all for appropriate transit service, mass transit service. But I think we need to be really careful about this. The late mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford, used to call it the war on the car. And I think at the end of the day, we need to realize that, guess what? We live in these big, spread out, largely suburban and exurban metropolitan cities in Edmonton and Calgary. We are not Copenhagen. All of these lefty municipal politicians fly off to places like Copenhagen and The Hague, and they say we want that in Alberta. Well, we don't have that density,
right? And we don't have those, and we have the winters
we have different weather, we have different conditions. So I think you need to be a lot more realistic about the balance of investment and infrastructure between roads and transit.
All right, back to the phones. Marianne from Calgary. Go ahead, Marianne. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Just quick question. On your recent trip to the U.S. with Energy Minister Sonia Savage, did you manage a little bit to convince the Americans, open their eyes a little bit more to who their wonderful neighbor is that can provide all this clean energy and cleanly produced oil?
Yes. Thank you, Marianne. Great question. I did. And I keep going back to Washington because we're getting such an amazingly positive reception on Capitol Hill, both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, when it comes to Alberta being a major source of their 62% of U.S. oil imports come from Alberta. When I tell, by the way, whenever I'm in Washington, Wayne, I start out my meetings. I ask the interns, I ask the security guards, I ask the senators and congressmen, what percentage of American oil imports do you think come from Alberta? And they look at me like, first of all, what's Alberta? Yes. Secondly, I say, okay, Canada. And they'll say, typically it averages out about 5%. I say it's 62%, 10 times more than Saudi, 5 times more than all of OPEC. And their jaw hits the ground. I don't know why we've never been out there telling this story. So we're finding great, unfortunately.
Whose fault is that? Is it the energy companies?
Yes.
Is it the government?
Yes, all of the above.
Yeah.
And that's why I ran in the last election on a commitment to really expand our advocacy efforts. It's why the Canadian Energy Centre that we created, to much criticism, is spending $6 million on an advertising campaign called Look North about Canada as a solution to their energy scarcity problem. So, you know what? We've got to be persistent. We've got to keep sending ministers down there. We've got to keep up those marketing campaigns. We're opening new offices in Chicago, Denver, Seattle, expanding our offices in Houston and San Francisco, Washington, D.C. We've got to tell our story.
All right. Quick question from the text line before we go to a break. Sort of related. I see many posts by Dale Naley about H2 and LNG developments and projects. I neither see any project coming up nor the jobs, and I'm one of them who's looking for the jobs in hydrogen and LNG sector.
Well,
this is Monty's texting in from Leduc.
Yeah, thanks, Monty. Good question, Monty, because what we have seen companies announce the intention to invest about $18 billion in new petrochemical projects and about $12 billion in new hydrogen projects. But those have not gone to final investment decision yet. And these are these big, complex, multi-billion-dollar capital projects have multi-year planning horizons before they finally pull the trigger and put shovels in the ground. I do think, and I'll give you one example of something that some of these projects have been waiting for, and that is guaranteed access to pore space underground for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. In Alberta, we've gone through a process to allocate that pore space. We've done so. We've awarded, especially in the Edmonton area, allocations for guaranteed pore space. So I know that some of these companies are now moving closer to FID. Let me tell you, I sat down with Dow Chemicals in May of 2019 to talk to them about a huge net zero ethane cracker close to Edmonton. Now, 2 years of hard work, then they announced their intention to do it, and now they're doing the final work. We hope to land the FID and make an announcement later this year, but these things don't just happen overnight.
All right, we're going to have to take a break. I'm Wayne Nelson with Premier Jason Kenney. We'll be back to wrap things up in our final segment on Your Province, Your Premier.
We interrupt this broadcast for 6:30 CHED Breaking News.
I'm James Dunn. 13-year-old Lila Smith has been located and is safe and sound. Edmonton police confirmed the girl missing for about a week was found in Oregon this morning. Police say the investigation included multiple units, including Alert, ICE, Oregon police from 2 cities, and the FBI. Lila has been taken to a local children's hospital for a precautionary examination, but arrangements are being made to return Lila safely back to her family. Now, a 41-year-old Oregon man is in custody and facing charges. Edmonton police is scheduled to talk at the top of the hour about this case. We'll see what they say and bring you what they say later on. Stay tuned right here to 6:30 CHED and our sister station, Global News Radio 880 Edmonton. I'm James Dunn.
When news happens, hear it first. Hear it live, only on 630 CHED.
Switch up your lunch routine with Tim's new loaded bowls and wraps. For a limited time only, try them with shredded seasoned steak, tasty grains, crispy onions, and delicious chipotle sauce. New Tim's Chipotle steak loaded bowls and wraps. Try one today at participating restaurants in Edmonton and Red Deer.
The BDC Small Business Loan is all for entrepreneurs. All for giving you quick and easy online access to the funds you need to increase your cash flow, buy new equipment, or invest in new technology. Apply now for a small business loan at bdc.ca/online loan and get up to $100,000 with favorable conditions. BDC. Financing, advising, smarts.
Don't miss the Kings of Luxury Vinyl Plank Flooring grand opening sale. Come by their new 18,000 square foot showroom for unbelievable pricing on Koenig flooring. Get click, loose lay, and glue down starting at $159 per square foot. Plus, bring the kids and enjoy their kids' corner. Every purchase comes with a free Lion stuffy for the kids and a free canvas bag for you. Head to Kings of Luxury Vinyl Plank at 15108 118th Avenue. Look for the Lion.
Is your kid a picky eater? Do they always go for safe foods, avoid sauces, sticky fingers, or food touching on their plate? Is dinner time making your child and you anxious? Cool thing is, our pediatric occupational therapist, Tamara Loke, might be able to help. LeadingEdgePhysio.com.
The inventory is unprecedented. Volvo of Edmonton is proud to boast an amazing selection of in-stock Volvo XC40s, 60s, and 90s. Visit Volvo of Edmonton today and experience the exemplary service you've come to expect and the affordable luxury only found with Volvo. Volvo of Edmonton, 10-time Volvo Excellence Award winners. Outstanding service, outstanding safety.
Volvo of Edmonton.
So, when is the last time you washed your hands? Regular hand washing helps lessen the spread of bacteria and viruses that can make you and your family sick. So don't be shy to rinse, lather, and repeat. A message from 630 CHED.
This is your hotline to the leader of our province. Call now to talk to Premier Jason Kenney, 780-496-0063.
This is your province, your premier on 630 CHED, Edmonton's News. Today's talk.
Wayne Nelson back with you as host and moderator of Your Province, Your Premier, broadcast throughout the province every other Saturday morning during the summertime from 10 until 11 in Calgary on 770 CHQR and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. If you have something you want to bring to the Premier's attention, here is your opportunity to chat one-on-one. You know the numbers, you know the text lines. The lines are full. The texts are coming in that I can't keep track of everything. We're going to start off with William, has been hanging on for 17 minutes. William has been calling from Medicine Hat. Go ahead, William. You're on with Premier Kenney.
17 minutes. I didn't even count. I drive a big rig, and the price of fuel is the number one cost for me. So every time I fill up, you're looking at 450, 500 liters. And I try to fuel up as much as I can in Alberta because it's cheaper here than anywhere else. And I guess what I'm wondering is the cost at some point going to come down so that I can tell my customers, you know, I'm going to be able to lower your shipping costs because I'm paying less at the pump.
Yeah.
And for the record, Mr. Kenney, I think you did a pretty good job for what you were handed.
Thanks, William. I appreciate that. The answer is that we've done everything we can as Alberta government to reduce the fuel taxes, including diesel, by scrapping the provincial fuel tax, and that's big money, actually. I mean, it's $1.4 billion cost to the government over the year. We're the only province in Canada to have done that, and so that's all the relief we can do directly, at least on that piece. But what's going to happen here is, we've seen a slight decline in overall the market price for fuel, but it's probably going to stay high for the next at least 2 or 3 quarters, right into 2024. And I wish I didn't have to tell you that, but the truth is that the war in Ukraine has constrained Russian exports, of course. And here's the fundamental problem. For the last 5 years or so, in part because of lower oil prices and anti-energy government policies, there's been a total lack of global investment in upstream energy production, exploration, and production. So that means the world's producing about 100 million barrels a day, but consuming the same amount. So inventories are drawn right down. There's scarcity, and nobody is putting the big investment in to additional supply. So the problem here, to be blunt, sorry, William, to carry on here, but there are governments on the Green left who want to make energy unaffordable, which is why they've been promoting policies to create energy scarcity. And now they're getting what they want. So we need governments that actually say that energy must be reliable and affordable, support policies that ensure that. That's the only way, durably, that we can get these prices down.
All right. Back to the phones. Sean calling from Edmonton. Medical management question. Go ahead, Sean.
My name is John, and thank you for your time, Mr. Kenny. I'm going to read a couple things to you first, and I'd like you to provide an answer, please.
You'll have to make it quick.
Okay. In 2010, a medical panel had directed WCB Alberta to come up with a better medical management plan for electrical injury. They had provided 28 research articles, and then in a 2019 decision, it was shown that 25 of those research articles went into a medical review, long-term sequelae of electrical injury. My FOIP request proved that it was reviewed and approved by the prior medical director of WCB Alberta, Dr. Lappy. However, the same 2019 decision also showed that the lead author of that medical review, who later got promoted to a full-time employee, completely refuted her own medical review almost word for word. When you read through the decision, you have a medical review which was published in 2013, but prior to it being published 3 months prior, a medical consultant and now full-time employee completely refuted the medical review.
Okay, John, and your question?
That behavior?
Okay, thank you.
John, no, I can't. I just don't. I'm not familiar with that report or the case. Thanks for flagging it. My staff monitor the program. I'll ask them to check in with Minister of Labour on that. I don't know anything about the situation.
Workers' Compensation Board, certainly a whole can of worms.
It always has been.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Kim is calling from Calgary on firefighter hours. Go ahead, Kim. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Thank you. I understand there's 2 pieces of Alberta legislation dealing with firefighters, municipal firefighting, and one of them is good, and that is that, a regular shift can be extended due to extenuating circumstances. But the other one says that a regular shift length can be 24 hours. And apparently, from what I understand, Calgary has put that into place. And I'm just wondering how safe it is for the crew and the public for firefighters to be working a 24-hour shift all at once. Shouldn't firefighters be all awake and all alert? All
sure. Well, Kim, this would be totally within municipal, so I just don't have any line of sight on that or control over that. Of course, the fire departments are municipal, but I do know that they work these things out in compliance with the collective bargaining agreements with the firefighters unions, and they're there to represent safety and the interests of their members. But I don't think that's new. I always thought that firefighters have often multiple day shifts, and they can sleep in the firehouse and work out there and then go out for their calls. So I'm not sure that that's completely a new approach.
All right. Text line from Wendy in Calgary. We have a big concern on transportation. How can they keep allowing houses to be built, but don't do any road widening lights or highway improvement on the highways for the safety of our people. Now, she gives an example. We live in the Langdon area. They're now putting in 1,000 new homes. Nothing is reported in the future to widen Glenmore Trail or Highway 797. The increase in traffic is horrendous and dangerous. There's not even a shoulder to pull off on. I've traveled through there, and she's absolutely
That's
right.
Wendy?
Wendy, yes.
Okay, Wendy, obviously I can't be aware of every road situation around the province. I would just strongly recommend you call your MLA and make them aware of this and ask them to advocate for this as a priority infrastructure program. We are spending more on road maintenance and modernization than I think any government in Alberta history, but we can't do everything all at once. But if there's a safety issue there, then if it's a local priority, then it will get on our capital plan. So just advocate with your MLA on that one.
All right, we have time for one more text response, and we'll have to make this one quick. Why aren't Albertans receiving dividends or payback directly for all the money that a few corporations receive from the Alberta government? This should be legislated, as Albertans are on the hook for millions, yet see no return on investment. Creating jobs is unnecessary when there are more jobs than people willing to fill them.
Why aren't we providing rebates for
receiving dividends or payback directly for the money that a few corporations receive from the Alberta government? And I'm not sure what the...
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to unpack that. When you say that companies receive from the Alberta government, like we don't have subsidy programs for businesses. I mean, there are some incentives we have. For example, the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program is a offset on eligible capital costs once a major project is done. But if we didn't have that program, we wouldn't be bringing any hydrogen or petrochemical projects to Alberta. They'd all be going to Texas, Louisiana, Southeast Asia, West Africa. So if we want to play in that space of a future economy, we need to have incentives that are equivalent to what other jurisdictions around the world do. And we do get the taxes back, plus the employment and the taxes that come from that.
All right, Premier Kenney, we run out of time. Thanks for joining us again today, and we will do this again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks very much, Wayne. I always appreciate it.
I'm Wayne Nelson. You have been listening to Your Province, Your Premier.
It's weird to hear this from an announcer, but if you are a parent and your teen is with you, Drug Free Kids Canada is encouraging you to turn down the volume on your radio and take some time to talk. Go on. Now's the perfect time.